beautiful soul family, and welcome to the Walk On Podcast, the podcast where I try to demystify spirituality, personal growth and healing, and whatever else I feel like talking about. I'm your host, Britt Cannon, and this month's episode is called Hypervigilance. This is a thing I have struggled with a lot in my life. And I am trying to unpack it right now. And to be honest with you, a bitch is terrified. Like I went through my early life kind of being like just as open can be, and like super naive. I just trusted people. I heard this Jewish proverb that says, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And so because I'm a person who just like, I mean what I say what I mean, I'm very honest. And I just try, like, it never occurred to me to lie about certain things or to like hide my feelings. And so I thought everyone else was moving through life the same way. Like I didn't realize that other people had like hidden intentions, or they might say one thing and mean another, or I just like took everyone at their word and like at face value. And I had to learn through a lot of hard work and a long time and a lot of just like focusing on my patterns that I lacked discernment, that it was really hard for me to see when someone's words didn't line up with their actions. It was really hard for me to see red flags, and not, never mind seeing them, but also like taking them in and like applying them and removing myself when necessary, or laying a boundary when necessary. Like I had none of these tools. I had none of this awareness, and I learned it by being betrayed over and over and over. So, as is my way, being a Libra, I swung that pendulum a little too far the other way, and started moving with this hypervigilance that I think served me initially. I was sort of like drunk with power. Like I realized I could see red flags. I realized I could have discernment. I realized I had a say in who was or wasn't in my life. I realized I was entitled to my boundaries and to my own safety. And I went ham, It was just like, walls are up, like nobody's getting in. And I think that because of this, there was this period, this liminal space. I talked about it in my most recent Substack article that was on last month's episode called Under Pressure. And it's about like moving through life with a lot of pressure on you and what it can do to you and how it can sort of stunt you and get in the way of your relationships. And your own happiness and like your own authenticity, if you're just like always trying to live up to the pressure someone else is putting on you to like meet their expectations of who you should be. And in that article, I was talking about how I had this period of time where I had shed the old. I had let so much go and experienced so much loss. And I was just sort of in like this emptiness of like nothing new had come in. So I was utterly alone, like the most alone and lonely I had ever been in my life. And I was hoping new and better would come in, but I didn't quite know how to let it in. I didn't exactly know what I was looking for. And I was just kind of like, something would come along. I would approach it with curiosity, which is that's next month's episode is about being curious. But I would approach it with curiosity, and at the smallest little hint of like something I can't handle, like someone who can't listen to boundaries, someone who doesn't know how to apologize, someone who can't receive apologies or trust or open up to people who are just extremely dysregulated, basically. And when they're dysregulated, they sort of take on like an offensive, defensive, or like malicious path to like fix themselves, regulate themselves, you know, people who are a little bit more aggressive and volatile, or like extremely passive aggressive and like can't handle any kind of conflict. And if I would run into people like that, or people who were emotionally avoidant, like I had a long list of stuff that were like red flags that are still red flags to me. There's still things that I have no interest in like relating to. And so it was like I was experiencing these like waves or these like ghosts or revisitations of like energies from the past. Like it wasn't the same people, it wasn't in the same package, although sometimes it was the same astrology placements, because y'all know how that freaky shit happens. And I would have to like basically like choose myself in those moments and protect myself. And so it was just, it seemed like everything that was coming in was just being brought in for me to like let it go. And it was good in many ways. It protected me in many ways. I don't regret those decisions. That's what I needed at the time. And I think I needed to show my inner child that I would protect them, that I can protect them. I know how to protect them. It's important to me to protect them. And that sort of helped like soothe the wounded inner child that like wants to act out or wants to people please or wants to like keep the peace or whatever it might be, you know, whatever, however it manifests, however it manifests for you, like in your life, in your patterns. It may be different, but, and it's a big but, but when I think back, or like maybe I'll start from here, like the new has come in. I am so balls deep in new that I can't even tell you how different I am, how different my life looks, how different my energy is, how different I respond, how much more differently I respond to things, how much more grounded I am, how much more patient I am, how much less frantic or desperate I am for anything in general. I'm just sort of like in the flow. I feel very confident. I feel very in my authenticity. I feel very loved and celebrated. It's like when someone I haven't talked to for a long time asks how I am, like I have nothing but positive things to say about my life. And that's not to say there isn't struggle. It's just to say that I am tapped into my resilience. I trust the flow of my path and my universe. And I am grounded in my authenticity, my boundaries. I am able to receive love. And I feel like, I think I've talked about this a lot in my podcast, but there's this metaphor that the spiritual teacher Louise Hay, like, you know, love or hate her, there's a lot to criticize, but I never throw the baby out with the bathwater. And if I hear something that resonates, I keep it no matter who it came from, because I can use it to benefit me and help me grow, right? I can't control who said it, but she has this metaphor she uses where she talks about how like early on in your healing journey, you just encounter like boulder after boulder after boulder, and they're like huge, and to go around them would take forever, and you can't really climb over them because they're too big. So you just have to like chip away at them until you break through, and then you meet another one and you break through, and then you meet another one and you break through. And then eventually, after a lot of time of doing this, a long journey through the path of boulders, you look around and all there is gravel. And she says, gravel you can handle. And I am like, my path is gravel. I have broken through all those stones. And so I'm in the new, right? But similar to the pressure I talked about in my last episode and in my Substack article, check that out. I didn't realize that I was carrying the pressure with me. It reminds me of this Buddhist allegory where like there's two monks traveling from like one place to another, and they have this rule where they're not allowed to like touch a woman, and they come across this woman who who needs to cross this river that they're about to cross, but she's like, I can't swim, I'm afraid to cross it. And so the older monk picks her up and carries her across the river. And his younger like apprentice monk is just like seething, and they're walking and walking and walking, and he's just like so angry. He's like, I can't believe this guy did that. I can't believe he compromised his morals. I can't believe he broke the rules. Like, how could he do that? I'm so disappointed. Like, I'm so just like fraught with that he made this choice that I believe is wrong. And so eventually he works up the nerve to be like, I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you picked up that woman. You know we're not supposed to. And the older monk says, I put her down ages ago. You're still carrying her. And that's it, right? Like, I left the people who instilled the pressure in me. I laid my boundaries. I protected myself. I got away. And yet I was walking through life carrying their voices in my head, their pressure on my shoulders. And I've realized now that it's up to me to put them down. You know, like they were programmed into me against my will, but I have awakened to the fact that I've been carrying them with me, and that like it's up to me to put them down now. And that's also how I feel about this hypervigilance. One thing my therapist says to me all the time, like almost every session, is you can trust your own stability. Like you can trust your judgment in the life you've created. You don't have to be like looking over your shoulder constantly for that other shoe to drop. Like you've built a firm foundation. You have discerned, like you have been patient, you have been mature, you have been slow, like you've done everything in the most healthy way you possibly could. And now it's up to you to trust it. And that's what it is, right? And like trust is the other side of that hypervigilance coin, right? Like to trust is to stop resisting, is to surrender. And hypervigilance has this very like active, defensive, like almost it can reach levels of paranoia quality. And I think this speaks to like a macrocosm that we experience in like regarding leftist infighting specifically. It's like if you think about it, you know, how do people become leftists? Like usually through struggle, through trauma, through oppression. Like things happened in your life to awaken you to the inherent unfairness of the system. Of ding 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 ding, walk on podcast drinking game, the white supremacist capitalist is heteropatriarchy. And so everyone is meeting in this place of like having this beautiful intention of liberation for everyone. It's an amazing thing to want, to desire, to like understand we need. And it would be nice if like we could trust everyone's intentions, but it is like, sorry, spoiler alert, cliche time, like it is like hurt people, right? And when you get a bunch of, this happens in the queer community too, like when you get a bunch of hurt people in community with each other, the potential for dysregulation, for misunderstanding, for miscommunication, and for, you know, kind of toxic shit to take place is, you know, it's like likely. It's it's just going to happen. I mean, as you move through life, you have to encounter people and be in spaces with people, work with people, collaborate with people, sometimes be in relationship with people who may not be where you are on your healing journey, who may not be interested in healing at all. And then you have to figure out how to navigate that. Like it's likely that we're going to encounter people who ruffle our feathers or trigger us in general in life, but specifically in community where like you feel like you should be safe, you feel like, you know, if it's like if everybody is in their integrity and is practicing what they preach, then like we shouldn't have these carceral what's the word, punishment minded cancel culture type of stuff. We shouldn't have like interpersonal conflict becoming like a community's problem or turning into smear campaigns. We shouldn't have people like using a capitalist mindset or white supremacist mindset to gain power over others, and exploiting people and stepping all over people to like achieve their own means or whatever. We shouldn't have those things. We should all start from the same place of like integrity and just wanting better, wanting to do better, wanting to create better, wanting to experience better. And you want to just like trust that and be in that energy and be able to be vulnerable and open and like not have to worry about all this stuff and just focus on getting things done. But it's so rare that that happens. And I think like a big contributor to that is hypervigilance. I think like that it's hypervigilance when you get to the point in healing where you're like, okay, I understand that in my childhood I had no choice in what happened to me. That whether you believe our souls chose or didn't choose, you know, our family of origin or whatever is beside the point. It's just like on a material level, I had no say in what happened to me. And I couldn't escape it even if I wanted to, you know, like even if I had the wherewithal to be like, God, I wish I could run away or whatever, you don't always have that option. So you're sort of stuck in your suffering, and that's extremely traumatizing and upsetting. And it like literally manifests for some people as like claustrophobia. It's like the emotional experience of being trapped like that. You know, the kind of trauma that gives you like complex PTSD. A lot of times people end up being claustrophobic, even if they've never been like held down or trapped in a small space. And I think that is fascinating, like fascinating to me. Because it's like that's what it is, right? Like you're trapped. And I think that when we start learning how to protect ourselves, we have a tendency to take it a little too far. And it can, and especially if you're like, you find power and success in like engaging with outrage culture. And I like actually can't stand anyone who creates content where all they do, all their content is based around like chastising everyone for doing everything else wrong. And for it's just this vibe of like, I'm the smartest person in here. I know the best. Everybody else is wrong. Everybody else is dumb. And like, you're also a bad person. And I'm going to sit on my pedestal and point fingers at all of you. Like, that's just not the vibe that like resonates for me. And I think that like people equate those types of creators with success because that vibe is lucrative. Like it's way more lucrative. You get way more success, way more views, way more what's the word? Blah, 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 like making out. No, what is the word? Engagement is the word. You get a lot more engagement if you're pushing those buttons, because you'll get people who are mad at what you're saying responding to you and arguing with you and arguing with other people in your comments, and you're also getting the people who agree with you. You also get the people who are like scared to not agree with you cheering you on, or people who are like, look, if like this, you know, this button pusher, if I'm engaging with their content, it means I'm a good straight ally or I'm a good white ally or whatever. So they like elevate themselves into this place of being like the cop of the space or whatever. And then like everyone either agrees with them or doesn't agree with them. And then their stuff goes viral, and, you know, it's a lot more appealing to people. And I totally get it. And I've been in that space. These days, what I want more, though, what feels better to me, and what isn't as successful, hence where I'm at, is a more nuanced, more trauma-informed, more loving, and non-judgmental take on these types of things. So I think that like sometimes people are engaged in that kind of content just because it sells. But I think a lot of times people are stuck in that space, and this is where I was, because they're stuck in hypervigilance. Like they have achieved enough self-love to know they want to protect themselves and to protect themselves, but they haven't gone far enough to sort of let down those guards and like to realize they don't always have to be fighting. And that actually what a lot of interpersonal conflict needs is openness, is like putting those walls down. This occurred to me relatively recently because I talked about this in that Under Pressure Substack article. I haven't talked about it much because I know some of my family like listens to the podcast and I like never know what to share or not share. It's just like the boundaries are kind of weird. It's like when I was no contact with everyone, I was just like guns blazing. But these days I'm sort of like, I want to be more careful and respectful. But my mom is an alcoholic. She recently, like, I don't even know how long ago, maybe 6 months ago. When was November? I don't know. Time is wild. Like, I truly, people say 2019, and I'm like, yeah, that was like 2 weeks ago, and it was so long ago. So don't quote me on timelines. I have no idea. But a while ago, she was drunk and fell and hit her head and got a TBI and was in a coma and was going through withdrawals while she was in a coma, and they weren't sure if she was going to survive or like what she would be like if she did. And so it was like, it threw me, it was so shocking that it just like threw me back in contact with my family. And initially, like, there was this rough period of like, I was so scared. Like, I was so scared. My guard was all the way up. And the least little like perceived infraction, or like not even infraction, it wasn't even like that. It was just like, I would get overwhelmed so easily at like, I had all these feelings come up about like being the black sheep in my family. I had all these feelings come up about like nobody understanding me. I had all these feelings come up about how my grandmother, I was her like little golden child and her little like Rapunzel. And I was locked up in my tower and she didn't want anyone else to love me. She didn't want me to love anyone else. Like, she would literally get jealous, like a toxic partner gets jealous. And I would feel so guilty if I connected with anyone else or like had a good time with anyone else. She was even jealous of my relationship with like my cousin, who's also my best friend, or close friends I had, or partners. It was really weird. If you want to hear more about that, I don't know if I did an episode on it. I think I did, but there's this idea of enmeshment, where another name for it is emotional incest. It's like where your parent treats you like you're an equal to them. They lean on you. They can treat you like a little husband or like a therapist or like their best friend. Lorelai and Rory on Gilmore Girls are like a very charming example of enmeshment. But I think like the year in the life of like Rory coming back and she's like a whole mess, like all that gifted kid burnout shit. That's an example of like how enmeshment kind of affects you as you move forward as an adult in life. And so that's what was going on with us. But I always felt so far away from everyone else. And like, it was hard for me to be close to everyone else. And it's like, maybe it's autism, maybe it's my trauma, maybe I'm just not likable, maybe I'm too weird. Like, I couldn't figure it out. And all of that stuff was coming back up with like the least little bit of interaction. And after a lot of time in therapy and working on it and thinking about it, I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that like, I actually don't know if I don't open up. Like, if I'm not giving things a real shot, not with my mom, but like with my aunts and uncles, if I'm not giving them a real shot, a real chance to know me, letting myself know them, then I'll never actually know how good it could be. I'm not giving it a real chance. I mean, it's the same thing with romantic relationships, right? It used to drive me crazy. I know I've complained about this before on the podcast, where like everyone is just like, I'm going to pretend like I don't like you. You pretend like you don't like me, even though we totally do like each other. And hopefully one day we'll just like accidentally end up in a relationship. It's like, what? But that's sort of what it is, right? And eventually you get to a point where you're like, fuck, I have to open up. Like, I have to open up. I have to take a chance on this. I have to be seen. I have to tell the truth. And that's the only way I'm going to know. And so I have to trust myself trust my discernment, trust my ability to like get the fuck out if I have to, and trust the other person's intentions, at least like this much. You know, I'm not saying like go whole hog and be like, our lives are entwined now, and like no matter how bad you treat me, I'm gonna stick around. Like, we're out of that paradigm, right? We've already learned that lesson. We're not doing that anymore. We can trust ourselves. We can trust ourselves. We can put the wands and the swords down, and we can just be, and be curious. Listen to next month's episode that future me will be recording, and see how it goes. You know, Esther Hicks, another controversial spiritual teacher figure who has given me a lot of wisdom over the years, even though I also know that she's problematic. She always said that to her, the best way to be in a relationship, in a romantic relationship, is not to be like, oh, we're soulmates, oh, we're twin flames, we belong together. Like, it's to wake up every day and be like, I kind of like you. Let's see how this goes. And like that ding-a-ling-a-ling, that resonates with me. Like, that is like, I love it. I love it. I love it. Take the pressure off, experience it as a choice day by day. And like, ask yourself on occasion, like, am I still having a good time? Am I still enjoying myself? Is this still adding value to my life? You can do that with work. You can do that with hobbies. You can do that with beliefs. You can do that with friends. Like, you don't have to keep doing something because you've always done it. You can change your mind at any time. And if it stops adding value to your life, or it stops being joyful, or it stops teaching you, if it starts harming you or stunting you, or if it's just run its course, like, it's perfectly fine to decide to move on. But to kind of write something off or half-assed commit to something, I've known my whole life, like, I keep learning this lesson over and over, that half-assing just leads to failure and disappointment. You know, it's like becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, God, the unavailable people I have tried to love, and like they'll say things to me like, you know, everybody gets tired of me eventually, or like, I'm the king of regret, like I always let the amazing ones go, or like, I never open up to people until they're already done with me. It's like so frustrating. And it's like, yeah, but it's you. Like, you're choosing this. You're doing it over and over and over again. You know you do it. You know it's caused regret and pain in the past. You know you've hurt people with this behavior. And yet, here we go again. It's really frustrating, but I also totally understand it because I've been there before. And like I said, I've been fighting, or not fighting exactly, because I'm not in like a fighting space, but I've been confronted with this hypervigilance in myself. I'm seeing all the ways that I've been avoidant, all the ways that I've been closed off, all the ways that I've like been vulnerable as a defense mechanism instead of truly vulnerable, the ways I struggle with asking for help, and the ways that like I don't let people in but so far, and then I walk around wondering why I feel lonely, why I don't feel loved. And so it's become very evident to me that it's time to drop the guards. I've been having a wonderful time practicing this in my community, with my partner, with my best friend, with our best couple friends, with my cousin, and with like the queer community that I've been building and establishing through my friend Lace, who is oh gosh, the Instagram handle, what is it? It's like, you know, when you it's Ode to Pleiades. You know how you see people's Instagram handles and you're just like blah blah blah, like, because it's always one word or whatever, and you're just like I just know the visual of the person's handle, and like I don't have to read it or like make sense of it. I just like know it's them. So I've never actually like parsed out what the words are. Anyway, my friend Lace started this tarot and writing workshop where I do a tarot reading at the beginning of the workshop. Then we all break away and write, and then we come back together and discuss what we wrote based on the tarot reading, or like what came up for us. And then at the end, March, who also runs this incredible program, DIY MFA, Amazing community organizer, poet, activist. So is Lace. But just like a powerhouse of a workshop. Then March does the closing reading and usually ties it all together. It's very sweet, very beautiful. If you want more info on that, you can DM me. I can send you the link. I think I'm going to send the link out to my mailing list in case people want to join. It's really healing. It's really great. It's really fun. But through working with these two people, incredible people who I just like immediately know I can trust because the frequency of their integrity is very palpable. And so through that process too, and being open and like filling people in on what's going on in my life, even like things like texting back. I'm so bad at texting back. I'm so bad at checking in. I'm so just like hyper focused in my day to day that it's really hard for me to keep in touch with people. But even working on that has opened me up in a lot of ways where I realized I was protecting myself because like I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to bother people. I've shut that part down. And also I think like living with addicts, or I guess like I should say a less pejorative, like people who struggle with substance use issues, or struggle with addiction. There is this part of you, this is what I used to feel with my mom because I knew from a very young age that she was driving drunk. She would drive with us drunk in her car, where like you worry, you know, you're just like, she's out of my sight. Like, is she going to die? She would also get beat up by her boyfriend. I had an uncle who recently passed, like very recently passed, and it's extremely sad, who was like suicidal many times. And he also struggled with substance use. And, so, you know, you have this worry, this terror. You're just like so unsure they're going to be safe or come home or whatever. And I think I built this wall about like I shut off the part of me that worried. Like it became so overwhelming that I was just like, nope, not doing this. I'm not going to think about it. And I just like compartmentalized it away. And it's made me resistant to like keeping in touch with people or like holding space for people in my life, even as there's distance or we're busy or whatever. And also I learned not to get attached to people because it was such a revolving door when I was a kid. There was so much instability that like I learned, I mean, like almost before I can remember learning it. Like I've known it as long as I can remember, not to get attached to people because one day they're just not going to be there. And duh, like of course that makes me bad at keeping in touch, but just realizing that and dropping those guards, it's like, this is something I've been putting energy into, like I said, as long as I can remember. And I often think about, I remember when I was in limerence, I was in love with this man who did not love me back, was extremely emotionally unavailable. Or maybe he did. I don't know. I can never fucking figure it out. Like even when I read my journals, I'm like, did he? Didn't he? Did he? Didn't he? I don't know. The gaslighting was intense, but and the situation was complicated. But where was I going with this? When I was in limerence was what I was saying, and what was the point? What was the point? Oh, I have to think about it for a second. I lost the point. Maybe it'll come back to me. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the tarot cards that remind me of this hypervigilance. It's all, there's one pentacle. Of course, all the fours, like the Four of Pentacles, the Four of Cups is in there because I chose any card with like a defensive position. But it's a lot of wands and swords, which I've been talking about a lot lately. So I have the Seven of Wands, which is like the person, he's like standing over, you can see, I've talked about this in the last few episodes. You can see some wands up in the air as if he's on higher ground and he's like fighting these people who are beneath him. And he's kind of jabbing and he's like really focused and he looks like a warrior, you know, like he's fighting, he's in the fight and he's almost like exhilarated by it. And then I also pulled out the Nine of Wands where like this, a similar figure has like a bandage on his head. He's standing there. He's like got all these wands stuck in the ground behind him. And he's like, I've won these in battle, right? But I am wounded. I'm exhausted. I'm so tired and like battle weary. And I feel like more is coming and I just like don't have it in me. It's like, in like kung fu movies or like Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan movies, it's always like they just fight like henchman after henchman after henchman after henchman after henchman, and like they never seem tired, but they will have a moment in between like groups of henchmen sometimes where they're like whew, and then they're back at it. That's like the energy of that card. And wands sort of represent like action, passion, like what you're excited about. And these two cards sort of remind me of like the cost of conflict, or in this case, the cost of keeping those walls up, like that hypervigilance. And, I didn't realize that I was putting so much time and energy. Oh, the limerence point just came back to me. Let me talk about it before I lose it again. Used to think about when I was in limerence and I was like obsessed with this man, like truly pages and pages and pages and pages in my journal. He could affect my mood with like leaving me on red or saying something shitty or like making me elated if he said something sweet or like romantic that gave me hope or whatever. And of course, he knew when to do what and how to pull my strings or whatever. And and I used to say to the universe, like, either make me stop loving him or make us be together. Because if you think about the pie chart of like my energy and my focus, he's taking up so much of that circle right now. And imagine what I'll be able to do if I let this go. I thought similar things, and I've read people express this sentiment many times in like eating disorder recovery spaces or like diet culture recovery spaces where people are like, if you think about like the energy you put into thinking about food, thinking about calories, thinking about your weight, body checking, like comparing yourself to others, hating yourself. Like if you think about all the hours in your life you've spent doing that, and how some people, some women, do it until they die. Like they do it their whole lives, always on a diet. That's a lot of time and energy. And that's how I felt about like obsessing with someone who didn't love me back, and a love that was unrequited. It just took up a lot of space. And that's sort of how this like hypervigilance is too. And it's like when your computer is like running a bunch of programs in the background and like you're not actively engaging with it, but your computer's kind of running hot and loud and you're like, why are you behaving this way? I'm not asking you to do that much. And then you find out there was something that was taking a lot of power running in the background. That's what hypervigilance is like. That's what upholding these walls is like, because I think in our natural state, we just want to be. We just want to be loved. We just want to be seen. We just want to be ourselves. We just want to like fucking exist. And when you're in this space of self-protection that borders on paranoia, it's really hard to do those things because you're just like watching everyone all the time. And trust me, I'm not judging. Like I just figured this out 5 seconds ago. So, when I speak a little harshly or bluntly about it, I'm like mainly talking to myself. And I don't judge myself for being that way. Like I said, my pendulum was swinging a little too far in the other direction, and now it's kind of balancing out. The other cards, now that we've addressed like how it feels exhilarating at first, how it feels like you're on the right track, how it feels like I'm protecting myself, I'm doing amazing, because you are. Like you are. It's huge to be in a space of self-protection. It's huge to have boundaries. It's huge to have discernment. Like these are life-changing things. Cannot stress enough, if that's where you are, you're doing amazing, sweetie. Give yourself the encouragement, the celebration, the pride that you deserve to have gotten to that point. Because I'm sure you can look around in your families of origin, in the systems that be, and see plenty of people who haven't even gotten close to that far. It's so good to be in that space. But with this episode, I'm just asking us to push it a little further into a space of like, okay, I figured out how to fight. I figured out how to withdraw. I figured out that I'm really tired of like being on defense all the time. And actually, maybe like I was, you've even created a life where you're safe. You've created a space where you feel loved and protected, and like, or you've just met people that you're like, "Oh, I would really love to like belong with these people. I would really love to create community with these people. I would love to be vulnerable with these people. I would love to get to a place where I can sort of soothe my wounded inner child who's so afraid of abandonment that they're like afraid to put themselves out there, afraid to reach out, afraid to ask someone to hang out, afraid to like take a chance or whatever." And you can only get there through like time, trust, and practice. So like I want to figure out how to be open and be in this space and get the love I need, want, and deserve. Maybe it's like that new, but you understand like, okay, the time has come to open up. Four of Pentacles. The Four of Pentacles speaks about like miser energy, like an Ebenezer Scrooge. Pentacle on the head, pentacle on the chest, pentacle under each foot, and the person's like sitting on a chair, and it's like your obsession with like material stability, in the specific energy of Pentacles is like the foundation of your life, and it's making you closed off. Like you're out of balance. You're too focused on this one area. It is a defensive position, and it's also like your connection to source is blocked. Your connection to your heart chakra is blocked, and your connection to the ground is also blocked. So you're like ungrounded, you're unconnected, you can't feel your intuition, and your heart space just is closed. Some people kind of insulate themselves, or they engage with hypervigilance from a place of financial security or hoarding. Look at the, shadow president of the country right now. It's like that is a little man, a deeply insecure human being who's probably never felt loved in his life, who has to constantly prove his worth, mainly to his daddy, that he's like something because he has money, because he has power. And there's like no limit to what he will do to try to get the approval he needs, not realizing that he would be a much more likable person if he would just like work on himself. That's kind of the Four of Pentacles energy. Then, like on a different level, but very similar energy, is the Four of Cups, which has a person who's like sitting and meditating under a tree, arms crossed over the heart chakra, so still a very defensive position. And he has 3 cups on the ground, and then the Ace of Cups is being delivered through like a disembodied hand coming out of the clouds. And this is about like the foundation of emotional stability, because it's a 4 and 4s represent foundations and stability. So we have like getting too caught up in a financial foundation, and then we have getting too caught up in like an emotionally protective or closed off foundation. And what this card speaks to is like controversial, but like miracles are available to you. Like one of my ex-boyfriends always used to say, life is long and full of twists and turns. And I think about that all the time, because it's like, duh, like when I was stuck in that relationship where my needs weren't getting met, where I was asked to compromise a lot, where it was out of my integrity, like it was not a situation that in my right mind I ever would have consented to. But because I was lonely and I didn't have discernment, and like, I don't know, I just like stuff would just happen to me, and I'd be like, now I'm in a mess. Whereas now I'm much more like deliberate with where, like what I let in and what I engage with. Again, no judgment to my past self. I literally had to go through that to get here. So it is what it is. But, when I think about where I am now, like I never could have imagined this. This was not on my bingo card for my life, where I am, how stable I am, how happy I am, how cared for I am. And these people, all these people I know, so many of them are new, and the ones that have come back it's like a shock to me. The forgiveness that I've experienced, like the people forgiving me, the patience and grace and understanding and empathy that I'm receiving from people is like blowing my mind. And And it's like when you're closed off, you can sort of miss those miracles, you know? You can be that person who like doesn't choose to open up until the person's tired of dealing with you. When your walls are up, when you're too defensive, when you're too self-protective, when you've gone into hypervigilance, it can keep you just as out of alignment as being that person who's like blocked up in all the important spaces by an obsession with money. It all comes from a place of like needing security, needing to feel safe, needing to feel stable. And that is totally normal to want. It's totally normal after a lifetime of being abused to want to protect yourself. And it's necessary. Like this good life I'm in now wouldn't have been available to me, wasn't available to me when I was too open and people pleasing and out of balance in the other direction. The closed offness it got me here, but it is the reminder that like when the time comes to open up, when a blessing just falls from the sky into your lap, it's okay to trust it. And then I pulled out the Two of Swords, which is another like defensive heart chakra position. I talk about this card all the time. It's one of my favorite cards, the Libra Moon card. Two swords in the air, crossed over chest. It means like protecting yourself with intellect a little too much, like being a little too in the cerebral like mind space and not enough in the heart space, not enough in the feeling intuitive space. Can't see, blindfolded, and is confused. You know, it's like when you're stuck in the thinking space, you tend to get stuck in spirals. The solution to a thought spiral is like grounding and intuition and tapping into those emotions. And so this is like a intellectually defensive space. Like this is someone who can't take in new information, who like, you know, thinks they know best, who is trying to think themselves is trying to think their way out of an emotional problem when what it requires is feeling. And then the last one I picked has a much different energy. It more sort of mirrors the energy of that Seven of Wands. It's the Knight of Wands, which is like knight on a horse, flying, like going so fast, sword extended, rushing into whatever's going on. And I think this is part of the hypervigilance problem too, is that if you starve yourself of connection because you're worried about getting hurt, sometimes it creates a desperation that defeats the point or the purpose of the vigilance anyway. You know, I saw someone I love very much go through this where like he decided he was done with relationships and was alone for so long and wouldn't date, wouldn't try, wouldn't let anyone else in, and then got to a breaking point where the first person who came along who was like, let's do this, he just jumped on board, and like it literally ruined his life because she wasn't a good person to get mixed up with. And so I think sometimes like what we need is community. What we need is support. What we need is, if not unconditional love, because that's so loaded with like misinformation and like misdirection and gaslighting, but maybe radical acceptance is a better is a better path, like to be able to experience belonging and love and support and community and all the stuff we need that is so healing. It's like nutrients in the soil, you know, it's like black dirt. It's like the most healing vibe that exists. These feelings of belonging, authenticity, like actually being seen, being able to be vulnerable, being able to lean on others, being able to support others when they need to lean on you. All of that's what soothes the inner child. That's what maybe doesn't totally heal those childhood wounds or those systemic wounds, those generational wounds, but it does sort of act as like spackle. you know? Like obviously the wall's been fixed, you know. There's a scar there. But and it can flare up at times, in times of stress, in times of triggering. And I think accepting that flare ups are going to happen physically and like emotionally, you know, you're going to get triggered in life, and you can't protect yourself from that experience but so much, because it's like life is triggering. And also like having those wounds occasionally flare up reminds us of the ways we're wounded and prompts us. I have an episode from way back called What Our Triggers Teach Us, that is trying to show you something. It's trying to bring a wound around to be examined again. And we're supposed to look at these things over and over and over again without judgment, without shame, and without frustration. And I think this is what's going to get us where we want to be, interpersonally, within ourselves even. Some of the most challenging people I've ever dealt with are people who are hyper vigilant even with themselves. Like they don't let themselves feel, they don't let themselves be vulnerable, they don't let themselves make mistakes, they don't let themselves just be. And if they don't know themselves, they can't let anyone else know them. And oftentimes when I've had like volatile conflict with these types of people, it's because I've loved them enough to see them, and they don't like the truth of themselves that I'm reflecting back to them. You know, whether I say something or not, it's just like in the way I respond to them. It can be subconscious. It can also be like straight out of their mouths. But you know, if you've ever experienced that phenomenon of like someone being resentful of you for like knowing them too well, you know what I'm talking about. And I think like, oh, I hate to say it. Like, I hate to say it. And if it was me 2 years ago listening to me say this, I'd be like, ugh, gross. Like, you open up, you know? But what I am experiencing right now is like, I don't know. I can't even describe it. It's just like gratitude just pouring out of my pores. It's just like, so sweet, so good, so healing. And it makes me want to do it more. And I think it's like if you've ever experienced even one person seeing you, one person understanding you, one person like receiving your truth, respecting your boundaries, just like being on board with who you are, you know how good it feels. And it's like we all deserve to feel that. We all need that. The world needs that. We have to figure out how to get out of this space of just like everyone being so fucking dysregulated all the time that we can't meet each other where we are. And if we can get out of a space of like actively re-traumatizing each other, because it's like if people could regulate their own emotions, we wouldn't need as much cutting off. You know, we wouldn't need as much of these like finite black and white sort of experiences of relating to others. We wouldn't have to be so scared of conflict because someone isn't going to just like lash out and say the meanest thing you've ever had said to you because you laid a boundary, or you know, running a smear campaign on someone because they decided to end a relationship, or you know what I mean, or like using each other's trauma against each other when it was told in trust and confidence and love, and then now it's become a fucking weapon. Like we can get out of these patterns. We can get out of this energy of like, you know, the narcissistic abuse pattern of like, you find someone you care about, you put them on a pedestal, you just like burden them with all these expectations with like who they're supposed to be. You know, you're like, I love you, but I also wish that you would change all these things about who you are. And you're perfect, you're wonderful, you've never done anything wrong in your life. And then whoopsie, you did something wrong, you made a mistake, you're a human, but that must make you a terrible person and now I have to get rid of you. Like devalue, discard, you know, and then like besmirch or smear. And then we just do that again and again and again. And I'm sure we all know people in like leftist spaces specifically who just like do this in community after community after community. And it creates this dynamic of treating each other as if we're disposable. And in this really punitive is the word I was trying to think of at the beginning of the episode, punitive energy, where you're just like being a cop to the people you love and care about. And it's like the people who are struggling are the ones who need support the most. The people who are the least palatable sometimes are the ones that need the most care. And I haven't totally figured this out myself, to be honest with you. I want to be the kind of person who can love someone through these really tough things without losing myself, without being hurt by it. But I haven't really figured that out yet, to be honest. But I am working on it. And I would encourage everyone to work on it and to rethink how we handle these things, and the way that we rethought being just like an open beating heart willing to accept anyone, any treatment, thinking that you can just like love your abuser out of abusing you, or love the system, or like acquiesce to the system into like treating you like a human being. You know, like there's no respectability politics, there's no perfection, there's no self-sacrifice or martyrdom, there's no sweeping things under the rug that can fix these problems. What it needs is the Knight of Swords energy, the Seven of Wands energy of like, I am here to face this, I'm here to name it, I'm here to acknowledge it, and I'm here to shout from the rooftops that there's a problem and we need to fix it. Do I have the solution specifically? Not necessarily, but I know if we can all work together, meet each other where we are, emotionally regulate ourselves, model that regulation for others, commit to vulnerability, drop the hypervigilance, drop those walls, trust our intuition, and figure out how to relate to each other outside of these paradigms put in place by colonization, by white supremacist, capitalist, cis heteropatriarchal paradigms. I think that I know, my knowing, my intuition, my everything in my body knows that we can create a better, softer, more healing, less traumatizing, more open, non-judgmental, like cooperative world. And I feel complicated about even tackling this topic, even like expressing these things, because like I said, I've just figured this out like 5 seconds ago. And I never want to be the person who like accidentally says something that encourages someone to like stay in an abusive relationship or stay in contact with someone that's hurting them. Like my whole brand, this whole podcast is about like walking away from things that don't serve you. But I have come to realize that while my hypervigilance has served me very well for a long time, at some point it stopped. And now I have to walk on from that too. The Walk On podcast is a production of Walk On Productions. It is written, recorded, produced, edited, and marketed by me. That's right, all by my lonesome. This is truly an independent production and a labor of love, so every little bit of support counts. You can support me by liking, commenting, or sharing this episode. You can follow me on social media. The podcast content is at walkon_pod. And my personal account with my music, my dancing, my writing, and everything else is Brit_that's_it. You can book a service with me. I offer tarot readings, astrology consultations, a mentorship service where we meet once a week and discuss your blocks to abundance, to love, to self-acceptance. I also offer voice lessons, which can be just learning how to sing. It can also be throat chakra healing that teaches you how to lay boundaries and speak your truth. Or it can be gender-affirming voice lessons. You can book all of those at my website, which is britcannon.me/services. You can explore the other pages on my website to listen to my music. I have a few singles out. I have an EP I released. You can go watch my burlesque performances. You can also buy my book of poetry, Flight of the Final Girl, which explores my generational trauma through the lens of horror movies I love. You can book me for your event to perform, to do tarot readings, to whatever you want me to do for money at the email brit@britcannon.me. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. Happy healing. Bye.